Okay, this is a scene from the tomb of Userhat. It's from the 18th dynasty. No, he wasn't a pharaoh, but he was nobility. In fact, on his epitaph it says that he was one of the major scribes and a scribe over counting of the cattle and all of these types of things in his area. And he's not buried in a KV or Kings Valley site. He's buried in TT56, which I think has to do with Thebans, but it's just really nobility and nobility tombs. Some of those are just kind of meh, compared, of course, to pharaoh's tombs that people may be used to looking at. But also scribes' tombs, while they may not be giant, generally have real good art on them because, well, that's a scribe, and so you can imagine they would pick somebody that's pretty damn good to do the artwork in their afterlife scenes. This scene right here is one of the processions, and it's said to be mourners and so on. You instant look at this and you'd say, well, the wind's blowing and they're holding their arms up to keep their hair from blowing around, and they're going to a funeral or whatever it is. But no, this is a symbology that's like mourners and their procession for it. Thing you notice right off the bat is that they're all blondes. Yeah, you can look this up. You can, Tomb of Userhat, and it shows it. Make sure you're looking at the one. There's a couple of them. There's another guy with Userhat something else, and he's TT51 instead of 56 or 47, something like that. This is 56 and the scribe one, and this is the one you're usually going to see anything out of because, well, one of the other ones is kind of meh, but it also kind of looks a little cartoonish, perhaps even in the coloration too. If you look real close here, you can actually see where they had bright yellow hair, and then they took a yellow ochre and maybe mixed a little bit of red ochre into it or something, and got to the point that it's a little bit darker, and so you can see there's two colors going on here, and they kind of streaked it. Now you can really see it here, where they streaked it down, and so that's kind of, showing you which way their hair is combed and things like that, but yet in some of the other photographs, and even in this tomb, there are ones with a black soot that are on there, and they went through this whole diatribe of how they did it and this, that, and the other, but one guy came up with a great idea. He said they just take little pieces of dried reeds, and then they burn the ends of them, and then put them out, and then they would take and streak that like they're drawing their hair, and they would do the streaks in there. And that kind of makes sense because when they went after these walls in a lot of these tombs, not just this one, with just simple fine-haired paintbrushes, not even being abrasive at all, some of that sooty hair things and some of the lines that they had that were drawn out of that same soot type stuff would come off real easy. Yeah, I've seen a lot of pictures, and you've probably seen some too, where there's a blotch that's all cleaned off, but there's some little color missing. Seems like all the other colors are there. Well, as soon as they notice that, they're like, stop. They probably gave somebody they maybe shouldn't have the brush, and he wasn't so careful to do it. He gets to the point, and he goes, hey, can you come look at this color? And they're like, stop. So they try to get the cobwebs off of it and things, and you didn't realize some of these tombs have a little, silt and dust on the walls that are over time, and if you can get it off without ruining the paint, it really takes you back to a time. Well, it doesn't look like it did originally, for there weren't any little scuffs and little pieces of plaster that all come off of this. And this is a sculpted wall and flat, but then they plastered the wall, much like your drywall in your house, so then they painted on that. Right? But I'm going through this new site here. This is DuckDuckGo, because they let you, like Google and others used to, pick out a picture and then look at it before you go to it, and you can even zoom in on it, and it'll keep its reference point. Oh, here's another one, Tomb of Userhat. Well, that's probably not going to keep its users. Well, see, that's pretty good. And you can tell what's weird here about that is everybody's got that red ochre symbology, but they all have blonde hair. Well, if you look real close, you can tell this one's got red hair up here. See if I can see, that's red. That scuff's kind of ruining it. And you can see blondes and all here, but notice how that one's darker. So that's either darker and it got rubbed off, or it's that soot thing. And if you look real close, the forehead area is still yellow and the black part came off, so that soot thing and it rubbed off with it, probably. I don't know. One thing's for sure, his whole procession looks that way. And what we're really looking for is a better view of this picture. For on his wall here, it shows him in a chariot, or the pharaoh of the time, and he's blonde-headed. Yeah, it's just slightly different. There's another picture of a guy bringing a horse and chariot to it, and it looks odd because they had only recently started getting horses in the first place. We talked about that in the Hyksos and everything about that, but let's see here. Oh, there we go. Here's another one. That's better than the other ones, and you can see that even though they're red ochre symbology, they've got blonde hair, and it's like every one of them. In fact, somebody made the comment there's over 120 people in this tomb, and like 70 of them are blonde. I don't know if there got to be some kind of preference. Three of the scribes that were all blonde got together on this one, or how this worked out. He was a blonde, and so they made a preference for it in some way, but some of these ones, and I can't see one right here, you can tell that there's this scuffy stuff all over it, and it's that deal where it doesn't try to look like blonde and tries to look like, dirty blonde or whatever you want to call it. People get twisted about that red ochre symbology, and it shouldn't be anything weird. Red ochre males and pale females. So here's another wall painting onto it. Red ochre males and pale females and priests or gods is nothing new. You can find it in Greek art, and you know what they look like. You find it in Minoans, and you know what they look like. You find it Mitanni and Etruscans, all kinds of people around here. So it's nothing new. It's its own subject, but then again, these people only had 6 crayons. Can you imagine what you do with 6 crayons? Ooh, here we go. So there he is on that horse, and it looks a little Trojan-y horse, kind of a little different, although even King Tut's tomb has him to where it looks like a parade pony. But he's blonde-headed. And he's out on a hunt. For in this, you can see dogs that are chasing through, but then there's also antelope and jackal, and there's a rabbit, and there's a rabbit. And so he's running them down and shooting them with archery, but this is not too long after they got their, the other side of it, blonde. Same situation. And these are all supposed to be him hunting and so on. Userhat on chariot for gazelle hunting. And I want to show you this other picture. There's another one. Oh, here you go. So the common picture where you see them together with their wives. And in some pictures they have the wife as being pale and the other guy done and everything else. But in some pictures, and especially it seems like if the wife was active, or as a queen was active, you'll get her to be shown active colored. And so they end up putting that red ochre symbology on here. But here in this painting, you can tell that they're both blonde-headed. In fact, she's got her circlet and everything sitting on her blonde hair. Yeah. In fact, a few of these down here are blonde-headed. And then there's one that's red-headed. And then there's a blonde. Isn't that neat? But TT56, and you see it right there. Wow, we're having an electrical storm coming up on us here. I don't know if y'all can hear that in the background, but I sure can. So they ended up finding 8 mummies recently in a cast that was right near there, but it's not the same thing or dating to the same time, and they're stacked up over each other, which was weird. This looks like somebody had already pilfered these ones, and so they took them and hid them in here, and this is where nobody found them on the second time. There's quite a few times where it looks like that's happened, but that's a different entity altogether. See if we can get some other good pictures. here. Well, here's a picture of a jackal or a dog type thing that's hiding behind a bush. Wonder if he's going to see him when he goes out hunting. There's that horse chariot and so on. Again, him and his wife. That's a little bit bigger, but if we can get a look at it. There's him and his wife, blonde haired. It looks like he's either shave headed or red headed. Probably just shaved though, because it doesn't show any extra girth to around it. But then again, here we go with these guys that are blonde and blonde and darker blonde. See, they're like that's that scuff stuff, but you can't really see it. There it is, where there's blonde, but there's dark scuff all over it. But then there's just blonde, and you don't see any scuff. And then there's this, and then there's dark. So what's going on? Well, what's weird is the ratio here is so blonde, people. And for, everybody knows that there was blondes in ancient Egypt and Thuya and Yuya. And this 18th dynasty, this is coming through the times of Amenhotep III. And then, well, who is that? Well, that's Akhenaten, the sun god, bringing his new thing with the Aten. You look at Thuya and Yuya, they're blonde haired. Of course, that's the grandmother of Tai and Akhenaten, whose child is King Tut. So whenever they tell you that his genetics are R1b, then you're like, well, I guess that makes sense. But even in that world that you think of, this is highly exaggerated blonde, wouldn't you say? Yeah. People have made some comments on it, but they don't really want to make too many comments on it. You know what I mean? In a modern day where everybody's supposed to be PC and let people believe lies. Whoa, where is that from? That's intricate wall. No, that's from Luxor Times, and it's some other tomb. And maybe I'll look it up and find out what that is, but that's gorgeous. Now look at the ceiling and everything and the extra intricacy of that. That's just real nice. His doesn't look like that, but it does have this other little stuff around on it. If they look, yeah, well, like this, you can see here checkerboards and these streaks, and then there's this stars and wiggles in this other part of it. That I don't know if I can show you another picture. Yeah, so what we've been looking at is, no, not this. That's TT148. Well, let's see, mandragora fruit. What is this? So here's another Userhat. Da. Oh, wow. Well, I think that's redheaded. In fact, I'm positive it is. And there's another guy here. That's blonde. Yeah, there's a couple of unique things about this, other than the fact that it's just, a little blonde heavy and this, that, and the other, but a couple of unique things that maybe these scribes had going on the side, and they kind of threw it in there. I mean, really, you're going to get one or two views at it, and no one's ever going to see it again, right? But the other ones are shown right here. For if you look at that vase up top, it's a weird pink color. Well, look at his shirt. It's a pink color. When they described it first, it was supposed to be milky ochre. What the hell is that? Well, I'm telling you, if you mix milk with ochre, it doesn't do that. But if you mix white, in fact, if you take white, like the plaster of the walls, and mix a little of that red in it, there you go. Pink. Isn't that unique? Somewhat. 1400 BC. Okay, like this, I think, is that other tomb. And see how it looks a little cartoonish? What I was talking about? But the other one with the same similar name, but his number's different. Here we go. This is Tomb of Userhat, and it's got these guys with this horse, and this is the stuff that helps make up a chariot. So they're carrying in the pieces of a chariot in this stomping horse, which doesn't quite look right. And boy, he's small compared to people, but now they do that a lot. But all these guys are blonde-headed. Isn't that wicked? But so you can look this up, though. This is Tomb of Userhat, and you can see it yourself. And then there's even some videos where you can go off into it and take a look. Let's see. Here's the procession that goes to his funeral. Man, I hate to keep saying it, but instead of having blondes and redheads mixed in occasionally and stuff, and people tried to avoid that, I guess they're just going to avoid this altogether, huh? Yeah. I always thought it was weird. Doesn't it look like a red, white, and blue flag that's over here? Well, the hats of Egypt, they had this blue one, not a lot of people refer to, and then the red hat, and, northern and south Egypt, so they had red and white, and then they had that blue hat ceremonial too, so where have I seen those colors? That's just amazing. TT56. Bang. Userhat. Oh, so, everybody. So, what led me to do this, by the way, somebody put, well, should almost use that for the little epitaph picture, but somebody else already has, I guess. But, he's got this little thing on top of his head. It's like, I got a coffee cup on top of your head. TT176 is also named Userhat. That's what it is, I guess. And I swear there's one like 51 or 47 or something like that too, but they go meh meh. And the other one that's got his name on it, you can tell it's from a different era because, it's kind of like looking at that and looking at this. Now it looks more cartoonish. There's one other picture I wanted to show you. Well, I guess this is a good one. For that's them again, and kind of a good picture you can see. Yeah, it's red ochre, but yeah, they're blonde. I've got a whole list of these. Bang. Is that the one? No, but that'll work too. For here you see a whole group of those people, but see that dirty look, and then not dirty, and dirty, dirty, not dirty? Can you make that out? Well, if they had a good in focus picture of it, or especially up close, it really looks like somebody took and just took, well, maybe like a broomstick and set it on fire, then put it out, but then went shh, and put these lines on it that's supposed to, I guess, be like the way they comb their hair. But down here, there's a redhead. Dark, 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 dark. What's up with that? And over here, it looks like dark, dark, dark. So, But, There we go. Oh, yeah, and blonde people. So the anthropology blog breaks 300 hits a day in blonde. That's from Matilda's site. This may be one of the sites that he hooked up to, showing you the reality of its situation. I've heard that name quite a bit frequently. Anyhow, we're going down. We're a page down in this thing. Let's see if I can squinch it back up. So I've done a lot of videos and picked of different stuff, but as far as tombs go, this is probably the fifth one that I've done. Watch out, people, I'm gonna go fast. We're gonna look right here at the top again. Let it reload. There had to been something. Let's see, here's the cattle, TT56, here it is again. Well, that's the one we looked at before, but they're all blondes. Down low, middle, up top. They're all cattle farming and stuff. Well, and that makes sense too, I guess. Especially when you find out the genetics. Really. No, that's not it. Well, that shows them. Yeah, there you go. So it shows them, and they're both kind of blonde, and then there's a dark-headed blonde, and then, I don't know, ambiguous, it's missing, and then a redhead, and then a dark-haired, and then a redhead, and then a whole bunch of blonde people here, which I guess this is her and him again, and maybe the royal family and so on, I don't know. Yep, and then some dark heads mixed in down here too and everything, so. Yeah, somebody in one of my videos a long time ago that said, they're all dark-headed people. There weren't no blondes, and I'm like, well, that's funny, because they even say they were, and then here's some in the Cairo Museum that are blonde-haired people. Oh, that happened from the embalming process and stuff in the natron. Well, they took some hair and stuck it in the natron. It doesn't change it one bit at all. That's not true. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the black-haired people still. It would change. It doesn't. No, it never made any sense, did it? Doom, 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 doom. Well, so there's that pink again. Boom. This kid looks like a redhead there, but they didn't know how to draw kids. They just draw many people. Yeah, they didn't know how to draw kids until forever, but there he looks a little more blonde than redheaded, but kind of both. Kind of all ruined. Userhat, ancient Egypt, Kemet. And this was going on during the 18th dynasty, as I said before. Ah, here's the other picture I was talking about. So here's a group of them here, and they're all blondes again. On our way out, let's just... Okay, so now we're back at the dancer's picture, or the mourner's picture here. It was in his tomb. So let's see what we get out of this, because he was a scribe. So let's look at Egyptian scribe, blue-eyed. See what I get out of that. I don't know. I haven't done this site yet. It's just, being and so on. And of course, they've gotten to be so protective. Here's from the earliest dynasties. We're talking about 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, all the way through 12th dynasties. And they all have these crystal blue eyes in them. The anomaly there is that they're incredible blue eyes. When you look at the close-ups here, it's made out of a crystal lens, and then they've got this dark spot that's recessed back behind the eye. So the eyes look like they follow you around the room. There's a whole bunch of these. Yeah, but these are early Egyptian scribes. Well, this guy was a scribe we were looking at, Userhat. Of course, he's much later. But this 4th dynasty, this guy they weren't able to figure out the name of forever, until finally they narrowed it down, and now they realize who that person is. But this one's name was Mitri, and they know it from that. Blue again. And that carries all the way down through. And doesn't show in there because they're trying to shine a light through. But there's the same picture, and you can tell they're blue eyes. That's Mitri from the side a little bit. A little pinstripe mustache on him too. Yeah, isn't that neat? Neat effect. All these scribes. And all the way down to the famous, most beautiful Nefertiti still has one blue eye left. Her others isn't there, but that one's there when you get a good look at it. But here's Horaha. Wooden Ka statue. They've got it kind of cut off at the top, but this is 2 arms that go up. So on. So they say that he is with somebody in 13th dynasty. Dynasty 13. But that's a retelling of Hor, and Horus the Younger, and so on, and it carries down through. And there are people who believe that this is Horaha, and if you look up Horaha himself, that would have been a statue that they kept or started revering at this time, using those crystal blue eyes, designating a king from a long time ago. For they found, even though they say he's 13th dynasty, they found it in a 12th dynasty tomb. But of course, later and later, somebody can do stuff. Anyhow, any more? Well, those ancient Sumerians had statues like that too, and God, that unibrow that they had on theirs. But you look at the thick eyebrow on the Sumerian statues, they've got that situation too. There we go. Boom. Did one on her tomb itself too. You can tell the way she looks here. So, don't know what that's got to do with Egypt, but here's another one. Man, it's a terrible picture because it's not showing it, but his eyes are blue too. He looks a little like my dad. This is Copper. I often thought Copper got named for him rather than they're saying Capri and now left Capri. So yeah, blue-eyed Egyptian scribe. Hey, there's a blonde on the wall right there. Two of them, in fact. Oh, and the little kid's blonde, too. So, yeah. And so that makes sense, but it goes back much further. Let's take one more look at this. Let's go back to before even the earliest dynasties we just looked at with their blue eyes. And let's look up ginger. I'm going to put Gibbeline next to it because that's where he comes from. And he's this blonde-headed mummy that's found that was naturally desiccated. Let's see if this picture will show up good enough. Yeah, you can make it out. There's blonde curly hair stuff stuck to him and stuff. Sure, he turned dark like beef jerky. Well, when you make a mummy, it does. Bob Breyer, a famous Mr. Mummy, got somebody to that designated their body to science to naturally mummify him. And this real pale looking dude. And he, right after the process, without even getting painted and shellacked with the stuff that's tree sap, was this color. But this is a natural one. This was done just naturally out there. And also that pottery, and it goes way back. And you look at the Nakata cultures and everything else, and this makes sense and goes on with that. Yeah. So there's Ginger, the pre-dynastic Gibbeline mummy. A lot of people have said, hey, he was part of the fights that led up to the very first Narmer in Egypt and so on like that. He's in the British Museum. Here's another good shot of him. Oh, neat thing too, he's tattooed. Just like Ötzi the Iceman and all these other people. Figure it about the same time too. I've shown other videos about it, but yeah. Historic ginger. Well, there's discovery of ginger, but if you look, that's not really a ginger. It's really a blonde, isn't it? Strawberry at best. For if you look at Ramsey's hair and everything, that's real kind of red. But they say, oh, they put henna on that, and they did this, that, and the other. Well, they looked at it, and he was actually a redhead in his youth, and so even though he was gray, they dyed it back to the color of his youth. You can tell by his profile here. Well, he pulled his brains out his nose, but still, we're good. Funny how he's got that Greek balding pattern too going on, huh? And there's not just a few of them, for we have Thuya and Yuya, like I talked about before, that are the great-grandparents and old grandparents to Akhenaten. But Hatshepsut, Happy Mummy, blonde auburn hair, Ramses with red, Tutmosis the Fourth, Amenhotep, yeah, all shown to be have. That blue-eyed effect. Well, hell, here's the Nakata culture, pre-dynastic. Yep, and they're insetting this stuff. And they go, hey, isn't that lapis lazuli? Because it doesn't come from around here. It comes from in Samaria. Up near Afghanistan. Yeah, they had connections too. But there were other people that didn't have any connection to Egypt and really didn't know it existed. I guess that's going to do it. Like, share, subscribe, and enjoy. And we'll get on to another one here. Yeah. Blue-eyed Egyptians. The tomb of Userhat. Full blondes. Like more than 50%. Wicked awesome. Kind of strange. And then they've got that pink too. I wanted to talk about that more. For they found a 5th or 6th dynasty and they had this kind of pink going on then too. But there's only a few tombs ever that have this pink going on. And it's like, the hell's up with that? Anyhow, peace.